Thomas, Linda, Emily, and Jacob Harper. A family admired, a family loved, and in July, a family brutally murdered in their own home. What looked like the perfect suburban life ended in one of the most shocking massacres their town had ever seen. This is the chilling story of the July Family Massacre. The Harper family had always been admired in their small Ohio town. To the outside world, they seemed to have everything figured out. Thomas Harper, the father, worked as a respected contractor who had built many of the very houses that lined their quiet street. His wife, Linda, was a schoolteacher loved by her students for her warmth and patience. Together, they raised two children who seemed destined for bright futures. 17-year-old Emily had just been accepted into a prestigious college and spent her evenings writing essays and sketching in her notebook. 12-year-old Jacob was the kind of boy who never tired of playing baseball, always carrying a glove under his arm and dreaming of one day joining the major leagues. That summer had been one of the happiest the family could remember. Neighbors often spotted them barbecuing in the backyard or watching fireworks on warm nights. The Harpers rarely missed a chance to gather with friends, and their laughter seemed to carry across Cedar Lane. It was the kind of life others quietly envied, not flashy or extravagant, but filled with the kind of stability people hoped for. July, however, would bring a shift that no one could have anticipated. The days were long, the air heavy with heat, and the town's rhythm slowed into the easy patterns of summer. Behind the Harper home, the garden bloomed with roses that Linda tended with care, and the front porch became the family's favorite spot to unwind as the sky turned orange and pink each evening. Everything appeared normal, even idyllic, but beneath that calm surface, the perfect image of happiness was about to shatter. Within weeks, their name would no longer represent warmth and success, but tragedy and unanswered questions. Cedar Lane had long been a place where families felt safe. The street curved gently through the neighborhood, lined with neatly trimmed lawns and houses that all carried a sense of pride. Children rode bicycles in the evenings, dogs barked lazily from porches, and neighbors waved to one another without hesitation. It was the kind of community where people left car doors unlocked and rarely worried about crime. The quietness was part of its charm, a small pocket of peace tucked away from the troubles of the outside world. That is why the events of July 14th felt so unbelievable, as though the entire town had stepped into a nightmare that didn't belong to them. The morning began with the kind of silence that seemed ordinary at first. The summer sun had just risen, casting a pale glow across the rooftops. A jogger passing through the street noticed something strange. The Harper family's front door was open. At first, it seemed like nothing more than carelessness. Perhaps someone rushing out to grab the morning paper or stepping outside to water the plants. Yet as the jogger drew closer, the sight of the door wide ajar, unmoving, stirred unease. The Harpers were not the type of people to leave things unattended. Curiosity gave way to dread when no one answered calls from outside. The jogger hesitated, then pulled out a phone and dialed the police. Within minutes, squad cars rolled into Cedar Lane, their flashing lights breaking the calm of dawn. Neighbors peeked through curtains, whispering to one another, sensing that something was terribly wrong. The street that had once been a sanctuary was suddenly flooded with uniformed officers moving with urgency. That morning marked the moment Cedar Lane lost its innocence, and life there would never return to what it had been. When officers entered the Harper home, they were immediately struck by the stillness inside. The house, normally filled with the sounds of family life, now carried an unnatural silence. The living room was the first stop, and what they saw would stay with them forever. Thomas and Linda Harper were found there, lifeless, positioned in a way that suggested they had been caught off guard. The television was still on, casting a faint glow across the room, as if life had been interrupted in an instant. Nothing appeared out of place. No broken furniture, no shattered glass, no sign of forced entry. It was as if the killer had simply walked in through the door. The officers then moved upstairs, where the reality of the crime deepened. Emily's bedroom door was slightly open, and inside lay the young girl whose future had once been so full of promise. On the other side of the hallway, Jacob was discovered in his room, his baseball glove still on the desk where he had left it the night before. Both children had been silenced in the same cold manner as their parents. The crime was merciless, leaving no survivors, no witnesses, and no immediate answers. What baffled investigators most was the precision. Drawers were untouched, valuables remained in place, and nothing indicated a hurried search for money or possessions. The attack was not random, and it was not driven by greed. Instead, it seemed carefully executed with one chilling purpose: to erase the entire family. By the time the coroner arrived, the house was swarming with detectives and forensic teams. Outside, Cedar Lane was sealed off with yellow tape, and shocked neighbors gathered at a distance, clutching one another. The Harper home, once a symbol of warmth, had become a crime scene drenched in mystery. At first glance, the Harper murders appeared to fit the pattern of a burglary gone wrong. It was the most logical explanation: an intruder breaking in, the family surprising them, and panic leading to violence. Yet the theory unraveled almost immediately. Nothing of value had been taken. Jewelry remained untouched in drawers. Electronics were still plugged in, and wallets sat in plain sight. Investigators knew that whoever committed this crime hadn't come for possessions. They had come for the Harpers themselves. The detectives began digging into the family's history, searching for conflicts or secrets that might have led to such a brutal end. They interviewed relatives, friends, and colleagues, hoping to uncover a hidden motive. While everyone described the Harpers as kind and well-liked, small cracks began to show in the image of perfection. Thomas had been in a legal dispute with a former business partner over unpaid debts. Linda had once reported a parent at her school for aggressive behavior, which caused lasting resentment. Emily's boyfriend had recently ended their relationship in a storm of jealousy. Each of these threads seemed worth tugging, yet none of them explained why an entire family had been targeted in one night. For the investigators, the challenge was not a lack of leads but the abundance of them. The more they looked, the more possibilities emerged. The Harper home had no surveillance cameras, and neighbors had seen nothing unusual that night. The killer had left behind no obvious weapon, no fingerprints, and no footprints inside. Every avenue of inquiry seemed to end in frustration, as if the answers had been carefully erased. The town grew restless as rumors spread. People whispered about grudges, debts, and hidden affairs. Behind closed doors, neighbors speculated who among them could have harbored such hatred. The illusion of safety was crumbling, and suspicion was beginning to seep into every conversation. Attention soon turned toward Daniel Reeves, a man who had lived on Cedar Lane for nearly a decade. He was in his late 30s, unemployed, and often kept to himself. Neighbors described him as odd but harmless, someone who mowed his lawn at midnight and stared too long at houses around him. Over time, people had grown used to his eccentric habits, but after the Harpers were found dead, those behaviors suddenly seemed darker, almost threatening. Detectives began to question Reeves more closely. His house, just 2 doors down, offered a clear view of the Harper residence. Several neighbors reported seeing him outside late at night, standing in his yard and watching the Harpers through their windows. Others mentioned hearing arguments when Reeves had too much to drink, his voice carrying through the quiet street. When police asked him about the night of July 13th, his answers raised even more suspicions. At first, he claimed he had been asleep all evening. Later, he changed his story, saying he went for a walk after midnight. By the third interview, he mentioned visiting a friend, but no one could confirm the alibi. Physical evidence also started pointing in his direction. Investigators noticed a set of muddy boot prints near the Harpers' back porch. When compared with a pair found in Reeves's home, the size and tread appeared similar. Though not enough to prove guilt, it added weight to the growing suspicions. Reeves grew defensive during questioning, lashing out at detectives for harassing him, yet never able to explain his inconsistent timeline. While evidence was thin, his strange behavior and shifting accounts made him the primary person of interest. For the first time, investigators felt they were circling closer to the truth, though they still lacked the one piece that would tie Reeves directly to the crime. 2 weeks after the murders, frustration hung heavy over the investigation. Detectives had scoured every inch of the Harper property, re-interviewed witnesses, and followed dozens of leads that went nowhere. Just when it seemed the case might stall, a small piece of overlooked evidence surfaced. On the wooden gate leading to the Harpers' backyard, a scrap of fabric was found snagged on a splinter. At first glance it looked insignificant, but testing revealed it came from a shirt identical to one owned by Daniel Reeves. The discovery gave investigators the break they had been waiting for. With renewed energy, they searched Reeves's home. What they uncovered turned suspicion into certainty. Hidden in a locked drawer was a tattered notebook, its pages filled with disturbing writings. The entries were rambling but clear in their resentment toward the Harpers. Reeves wrote of feeling mocked and excluded, convinced that the family looked down on him. His words grew darker as July approached, shifting from bitter complaints to violent fantasies. In chilling detail, he described thoughts of silencing the laughter next door and restoring quiet to the street. Alongside the journal, police found the shirt with a torn sleeve, perfectly matching the scrap left on the gate. Forensics confirmed the fabric was an exact match. Even more telling, investigators recovered boot prints stamped into dirt near the Harpers' porch that matched Reeves's footwear down to distinctive wear patterns. The physical evidence, combined with the writings, painted a picture of a man consumed by obsession and anger. Though Reeves had no history of violent crime, the material collected showed a descent into dangerous delusion. What had once seemed like harmless oddities, his late-night watching, his muttered complaints, now looked like warning signs everyone had missed. The case against him was no longer circumstantial. It was undeniable. On August 2nd, nearly 3 weeks after the Harpers were found, police surrounded the small, weathered house belonging to Daniel Reeves. The street that morning was lined with patrol cars, their flashing lights reflecting off windows as neighbors watched from behind curtains. Officers moved cautiously, unsure of how Reeves might react. He was taken into custody without resistance, though his eyes were described as cold and detached, as if he already knew this moment was inevitable. At the station, Reeves was placed in a stark interview room. At first, he denied everything, claiming the evidence was planted and that he was being framed because of his reputation as the odd neighbor. But as detectives laid out the fabric scrap, the journal, and the boot print comparisons, his confidence began to fracture. Hours passed, and the weight of proof pressed harder. Eventually, Reeves broke. His confession spilled out, chilling in its lack of remorse. He explained that on the night of July 13th, he had entered the Harper home through their unlocked front door. Fueled by anger and paranoia, he believed the family had been laughing at him for months, whispering insults behind closed doors, and conspiring to make him a target of ridicule. In his mind, silencing them was the only way to reclaim peace. He struck quickly, attacking Thomas and Linda first in the living room, then moving upstairs to eliminate Emily and Jacob. He admitted he had no plan to escape and no thought of what came next. His only focus had been carrying out the act. Detectives listening to his account were struck by his calm delivery. Reeves did not cry, did not hesitate, and did not express guilt. To him, the murders were not a crime but a grim necessity, a twisted answer to problems that existed only in his mind. The Harper house was never the same after that summer night. For weeks, crime scene tape fluttered in the breeze, a constant reminder of what had happened inside. Eventually, the tape was removed, but the house remained empty, its windows dark and its lawn overgrown. No one wanted to live there, and even real estate agents admitted it was a place permanently stained by tragedy. The once cheerful porch, where the Harpers had spent warm evenings together, now stood as a silent monument to what had been lost. Cedar Lane changed too. The sense of security that had once defined the neighborhood vanished overnight. Families who had left their doors unlocked began installing deadbolts and security systems. Children who once played freely outside were now called indoors before sunset. Neighbors who had once trusted each other now eyed one another with suspicion, wondering how such violence could have festered so close without anyone realizing. The laughter that used to drift through the street was replaced by a cautious quiet, as if no one dared disturb the uneasy calm. For the town as a whole, the Harper case became a story told in hushed tones, a dark chapter that lingered in collective memory. People struggled to understand how a man like Daniel Reeves, who had lived among them for years, could harbor such hatred without being stopped. His conviction brought a measure of justice, but it did little to heal the wound left behind. The truth was simple and terrifying. Evil had existed right in front of them, disguised as an ordinary neighbor. The July family massacre became more than just a local crime. It was a warning that even the safest places can harbor danger. For Cedar Lane, the illusion of peace was gone forever.